We'll bring you into the conversation. Professor Siphamandla Zondi is, of course, the director of the Institute for Pan-African Thought and Conversation at the University of Johannesburg. Prof, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Well, now we know that Putin will not be attending this summit. What are your views on this, particularly if you listen a few hours ago what President Ramaphosa said, talking about, should they go ahead and arrest the Russian President Vladimir Putin, it would be a declaration of war.
I think the leaders of BRICS have decided that it is in the best interest of South Africa as the host and in the best interest of the BRICS Summit itself that the President Putin does not present himself physically to South Africa, because South Africa has a legal obligation, a legal dilemma it has, that it has to arrest Putin when he arrives in South Africa or risk violating its own laws. And I think that they have then decided on what is very common practice. Presidents are usually represented in the most important summit by foreign ministers, in other summit by other ministers. So this is to signal how important the BRICS Summit is to Russia, that they send a very high-ranking minister to represent Putin in South Africa, and thus avoid putting South Africa in a quagmire where they had to act on an invitee, invite someone and then arrest someone. And at the same time, as Russia has indicated just earlier, some months ago, that an arrest of their president at any point and anywhere in the world is a declaration of war. So this really is a huge relief. It eases things out. Now we can then focus on the subject of the BRICS Summit itself. Very important issues that need to be discussed and ironed out.
I want to go back to discussions on the BRICS Summit. What are the pertinent things on the table? But before I do that, now the next focus, of course, is the Africa-Russia Summit, which is happening next week. What are we likely to see, being discussed there, just in light of these developments now?
Very, very crucial economic decisions, because Russia's relationship with Africa has been around for a while, but it still needs to grow significantly in economic terms, especially in relation to trade and investment. So the agreements there that are expected that need to be taken in relation to trade and investment. There are also decisions that need to be taken in relation to agriculture and Africa's access to grain, to fertilizer, and to agricultural inputs. There are decisions that need to be taken in relation to political issues and also security issues. We hear that there would be agreements with a number of African countries that relate to security agreement, because Russia does have to regularize the involvement of the Wagner Group in a number of African countries, though it is a private sector company. But it has import on Russia's foreign policy. So certain decisions must be made in relation to how to regulate this now that the Wagner Group is almost dissolving, or is it almost dissolved after that military incursion, or we call it a rebellion, an armed rebellion in Russia a couple of weeks ago.
Now, as it relates, to the BRICS Summit, of course, a lot of focus has been placed on pertinent issues, as it relates to BRICS. This is the 15th summit. It's, 10 years since South Africa hosted its, summit. It's the first in person since COVID-19. Of course, membership is of a pertinent issue, as well as, changing the currency in which these countries are wanting to deal with, talking about de-dollarization. Just talk to us about what are some of those issues that have really been, pointed in a very dim light since the Putin arrest that will then be discussed next month.
Yes, the BRICS Summit, it is it happens under a very important theme. Two parts of the themes that are very important for us to think about. The first part of the theme is BRICS and Africa, relationship between BRICS and Africa, those decisions that need to be taken there to enhance this relationship. Then the second part relates to mutually accelerating economic growth, decisions that have been taken to improve economic growth in the BRICS countries, among the BRICS countries. That includes a number of things, including improving inter-BRIC trade, inter-BRIC investment, improving the ability of the BRICS countries to work together. That also includes the question of the currency, which is improve the ability of South Africa to trade with Brazil in the rand or in the Brazilian reals, and the same with all the other countries, so that to facilitate trade a little bit better. And there are also decisions related to technology transfer, vaccine development, and other very important decisions that relate in many ways to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals.
Prof, just as we wrap our conversation, one of the things that will allow South Africa time to actually look at, and this is what experts have been saying and some critics saying, that South Africa really needs to review, its relationship around the ICC matter, because we have seen a lot of back and forth as it relates to warrants of arrest that have been issued, to presidents that have made, appearances in South Africa. Just what your views are in terms of what South Africa should do going forward in this regard.
I'm sorry, I missed this relationship. The line broke. Relationship with who? With Russia or with ICC?
With the ICC.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it is an important subject that South Africa needs to really think about. The decision it has already taken right now is to stay within the ICC and contribute to transforming the ICC so that it's not seen to be anti-African or to be selective and to further the interest of the big Western powers. And that work must happen very quickly, engaging either 122, 223 members of the ICC to ensure the ICC is not seen to be selective, is not seen to be subordinate to the national interest of big powers. The second thing that it needs to do, it needs to resolve what it needs to do with regards to the Implementation Act, which was the act by which it domesticated the Rome Statute, in order to enable it some room to wiggle and to make provision, make conditions, such as a few countries have already done. But because right now the Implementation Act is open-ended and has no provisions or no limitations of any form or conditions of any form. It will have to do that and do that very quickly.